you've got an entire class or grouping of people where traveling and going to the beach was their passion, and now they're a content creator that helps people find great beaches. Monetization of skill and ability, things that you love. That's hopefully is the end of that's the idea of human endeavor. You do things you love, and then you're able to kind of be compensated for them, right?
I mean, nowadays it sounds a little bit like a luxury, right?
Well, I think if and this is getting straight into it.
Straight into it.
The only reason we haven't been compensated for our contributions in the past is inefficiencies. So, we all had a friend that was, into music, that told us about the best music out there all the time. And they did it because it was something they loved, and they weren't compensated for it outside of just appreciation and friendship. But that's what the music industry should evolve into. Layers and layers of people that are discoverers sharing with people who are less interested in discovery. And, that's effectively kind of a upside down V.
Yeah.
It sounds like a pyramid. I've already described a pyramid scheme. No, it's not a pyramid scheme, but it is a pyramid. All pyramids are not evil. But that sense that we all have friends that we know of that are better at other things than us, and that we would certainly compensate them for if we could. The person that invariably books the tickets for us to go to the concert because I'm not a ticket booker, and they're the one that knows the concert that's coming out like 6 months from now, right?
Yeah, this idea about music, right? Like, I was thinking about this other thing, like in terms of like what vintage you are with respect to when did your friends get cell phones?
Sure.
In like your social circle, right? And so for me, it was like right in between high school and uni. So we went through all of high school, those formative years.
Yeah, I see.
Absolutely no cell phones.
Yes.
And then they started to come into the market. And so you could have gone to uni, this is around like 2003.
Yes.
Without any cell phones. Obviously, Facebook was just starting up. And so like our recommenders had to be the friends. Yeah,
that's right. So you're right that the cell phone and then the advent of social media has meant that this is, and that's arguably what's made this thing move so much faster. Technology adoption. I got distracted there whilst you tried to kind of lay it on me how old you were. I was sitting there going like, listen.
I use the word vintage.
I'm 51 years old. So my experience is that as far as I can remember, I think Elvis had a phone in his, I wasn't around for Elvis, by the way, but Elvis had a phone in his plane, and then I was born like just after that. So cell phones kind of like I can't even remember. I think probably the first ones maybe like mid-90s. Is that when people started to kind of start to buy them?
Yeah.
Right?
And it was rare.
Early 90s.
It was like, what do you need that for? Oh, what do you do with it?
Yeah. I was there either ways. There was a Nokia 6310 that was, an amazing phone. So it was indestructible. You could throw it at people. It was literally used in murders.
And so like back to music a little bit here, right? Yeah. This seems to me like one of the most broken industries. Are we starting to like come around from that?
No. And, music is this kind of canary in the coal mine. Usually when technology arrives, someone tries to reshape music with that technology. And for eternity, musicians have been promised that this is the technology that's going to make the distribution of revenue fair. And every single time without exception, it makes it more asymmetrical and less fair for the musicians. So, I would be really surprised if there's any musician out there that believes that this technology is going to improve their outcomes. But by definition, if Web3 works, then it should. So I usually start when I say something like Web3, just in case. I like to help define it. Is that okay if I do that?
Please. Let me know your perspective on it.
Yeah, so the best way it's been described to me is the Web 1 was the nascent early internet. It was read-only. You went to a website and the restaurant said it was open. It's open at 5 p.m. and this is their phone number. And that was all websites did. Then some geniuses invented the ability to leave a comment, maybe a review. That technology led to social media. Users were now able to interact with these websites, with these community areas, the rise of Friendster and Bebo and MySpace, and then Facebook and Instagram, etc. And that's Web 2. So Web 1 was read-only. Web 2 was read and write. The users are able to contribute. Web 3 is read, write, and own. So your contribution is now valued and you can be compensated for it. So in the restaurant, I've kind of dug myself a hole here using a restaurant example. But if you're a reviewer and you're able to contribute, or if you're a content creator that's going to a restaurant and you're able to build them content that then gets them business, the ability for that restaurant to compensate you immediately is the premise of Web3. That your content, wherever it goes, is your content and you're getting compensated for it.
So I'm on board with this. And like you had me up into the point of like, and the restaurant compensates you immediately. And this, similar to like recording artists getting compensated, it seems like such a hard problem. Or it seems like...
I mean, it's a hard problem as long as we buy into... I just spent, so I'm a little bit late, or at least I was really flustered because I just spent an hour and a quarter at a bank trying to open a bank account. It's insane. And it just reminds me of how unbelievably inflexible.
You went to a real place.
Yeah, it was insane. Yeah. It was just everything about it was amazingly puzzling. The nice people in there. I walked in within 15 to 20 minutes. 3 people had walked in and yelled at someone in there. I can't imagine working. And they were really lovely people in there, but these people weren't yelling at the customer service reps.
They were emotional.
But they were yelling at the fact that, no matter what happens, the processes for this banking system that we've set up are designed to kind of frustrate and thwart you. That's the entire process. But so it takes us back to payments, right? Right now, and I'm going to pull this number a little bit out of my ass, but I've heard it from a couple of people. So 4% of our global GDP is banking inefficiency. So definitely fact check that. Let's fact check that.
Yep.
4%. So if GDP, when we think about that, what does that mean? It means that 4% of global GDP is in banking. Well, all they're really doing is moving money between things. That's not worth 4%.
Right, a lot of signatures and stamping. And
yeah, it's ridiculous. And back to your example, so say you've got, let's talk about the music industry. And I have some understanding of this.
Okay.
There are people out there that are much better. Gino the Ghost, follow Gino the Ghost. He's just brilliant. And he'll school you on this. But effectively, over 100 years, this industry just developed layers and layers of inefficiencies. So, a great musician will get a contract for $2 million from a record company. They've got this following, they've got all this energy. The record company says, we'll sign you up for $2 million. Sounds great, except for it's really actually a $2 million loan, and the record company owns everything ad infinitum forever. And you're paying that mostly back to the record company. But most importantly, you're earning a fraction of your revenue, and the only service they've really provided was distribution, which no longer exists in the record industry. Distribution nowadays is social and TikTok, and so the industry is so close to collapse through lack of functionality. But we do need to start building better systems that help compensate those musicians. So that's again where Web3 comes in. The ability for a musician to launch a track, for people to own a part of that track and its future revenue, and for the fans to advance the musician versus a record company. That's a much better way of doing it, right?
Well, the fans do this in the first place, right? To maybe the exceptional viral video aside, the fans are, as an artist, you're bringing your fans and that support initially.
Yes.
And that's what they're seeing, right? They're seeing the music, but they're also looking at, how many people have already sort of bought in and got into this.
Yeah, there's just nothing that they're providing anymore. It's just layers and layers of kind of of inefficiencies. And so without getting too deep into the blockchain space, but that was the promise of when Web3 arrived, the very first iteration. And I'm on record as saying I think this is going to change things, because I believe musicians can release an album, fans buy songs that are, or tracks that are connected to NFTs, those NFTs that funds the next 3 or 4 years, and those NFTs will be, tickets into events and discounts on clothing. I still believe this will all happen, but it's taking a lot longer for that infrastructure to arrive than I thought.
You're perennially early.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've built token gated websites, and we've got a Shopify plugin coming that will allow for token gating. And that's, are you familiar with that as a concept?
Yeah.
Yeah, easy. Okay, great. So then that's possible, right? So if you're a fan that's already bought an album, and you've got a token that says I bought this album, when you go to the ticket website, you should pay half price for tickets, right? And it's going to encourage people to buy the albums. It's going to reward your fans.
Yeah.
And so it all makes sense. We've just got to get the infrastructure in.
It makes so much sense. And the tracking in terms of, if you want to, just using that same ID, just using that same address, and you can have this whole this whole persona, attached to music or attached to one genre of music, and you can use it for your purchases, for your
And now we're getting deeper into the idea of a sovereign digital identity, the sense of a wallet.
So what's your take before you go down that one? What's your take on Spotify?
Well, I think we are living in a transitional period. I think that when we talked about Web 1, Web 2, Web 3, Web 2 gave rise to some really amazing innovations. And one of them led to these giant, super apps. This is Uber, Spotify, Instagram. And those apps provided really strong technological innovation. They gained massive market share because that strong technological innovation was incredibly expensive, right? The ability to build an app like Uber, I don't know if they're making money yet, but what I'm saying, they spent a hell of a lot of money building and innovating and changing the way that the world works. AI now means that the cost to build this type of functionality and to build a connection between someone that owns a car and wants to drive you and has driven 2,000 people and gotten decent reviews, that connection to a person that needs to get a ride from here to here no longer requires a giant gated super app. And so I feel like they were incredibly necessary. It was a transitional period, but I imagine that in 5 years' time, Uber, Instagram, and Spotify, these giant connector apps will be gone.
And I mean, for Uber, it should just merge into the cars and their network.
Yeah, so that brings up something, again, I haven't thought about this a lot beyond AI assistance in your phone, but there's no doubt that device manufacturers, Apple, Tesla, etc., will hold a lot of power here, right? This is this idea that somewhere, the path to the easiest AI assistant is going to be important. So if, in June, I believe Apple will release an AI Siri, like a pretty strong AI Siri. They've been doing a lot of work in it. And I think that will be revolutionary for most people, the ability with voice command to access, a really strong LLM.
Like actually open the app I want Siri to open?
Yeah, that's right. Actually, I had the best one the other day. I wish I could remember it. But it was like, I was like, call Justin Hutkus. And it was like, and it swore back at me, do you mean Buttlick Rackless? Or something like that. It was just great. She's insanely bad.
Yeah.
But people that have connected Siri to GPT-4, it's transformational, right? Because again, our ability to be lazy is like untethered. It's everything to us, right? And so the ability for us to get into a car and go, I've got 35 minutes. Is there anyone that needs a ride around me? And that car to then find you a vetted rider who's got a validated ID, has ridden with 2,000 people and has a score of over 5, which your AI knows. you won't need Uber to do that. B, you're right, it's probably just going to be living in your Tesla, and Elon's going to be making more cash. So yeah.
And the payment will happen with a fraction of the fee and hassle that payments need to happen now.
Yeah, the biggest, so yeah, I mean, that's the big one that we started on, is that the fees for these transactions by logically should be reducing, because the effort required to make that transaction happen is reducing, right? We started with, to transfer money from New Zealand to the US back even today, actually.
Right.
Like if I wanted to transfer money to the US today, I would have been another hour at the bank, right? Filling out forms, etc.
Oh, you'd have to go back home and you'd have to get the scroll that says you own all this stuff. And
it's insane. It's insane. Whereas, as you know, with blockchain, I can do it in a couple of seconds, and it might cost a few bucks, but it's infinitely easier, right?
Yeah, I can transfer from Canadian accounts using Wise. And it's fast, but it's still hours. Yes. That's only fast compared to what we're used to.
Yeah.
And it's still on the order of like 1% or 2%, which adds up. Sending $1,000, the fees add up. Especially when we've already for data on the internet. Are you familiar with the interweb, right?
Yeah.
Like the marginal cost of sending data is zero.
Yeah.
It doesn't take any additional money to send additional packets on the internet. But why can't we do that with money, right? Like that's just additional info.
Well, there's smarter people than me that will explain the verification challenges that we have with proof of work, proof of stake, proof of history, these kind of different technologies. And if we're going to move to a decentralized verification system, finding ways to make them more efficient. Because I'll talk the joys of blockchain forever, but if you've spent enough time as a fan of Ethereum like I have, and like every 6 months there's some technology that's going to save us on fees, and it doesn't. So I'm skeptical still.
we'll come back to that, but something that might be more in your wheelhouse. What you mentioned Instagram, right? Instagram.
Sure, yeah, that's right. That's true. We haven't even set an agenda for this. We just started talking. I'm so sorry.
Right, Brooke, welcome to the show.
Yeah, this, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, is definition ADHD. What you're seeing here right now, boom.
All right, so what do you see as happening with Instagram? Give me, because you're well into influencer marketing, and we'll talk about that as well. Yeah. So Instagram, what's it good for, and where is it headed? What needs to be fixed?
I mean, I think for context, seeing as my history has been, if you look back through everything I've done, been passionate about how content, purposeful, strong content can move communities, and those communities can form change with that content, like great content, communities, and change. And that's how I ended up in influencer marketing. Not necessarily because I loved the idea of influencer marketing. Okay. I could certainly see that while I was at television, in TV, I could see it. I could see TV falling apart and social media eating its audience. But I also saw the ability, like with this generation, or in every following generation, if you're going to want to inspire them to do things, you need to be where they are, making content like they make it, and with the people that they admire. And so we are Tenzing, which is our company, manages 130 purposeful creators. These are people that are passionate about mental health or advancing women's sport or climate, et cetera, right? So each one of them has a defined goal. So before I get painted with too much of the influencer marketing brush.
As like a bad buzzword, people are just accepting checks to send to their followers.
Yeah, I mean it has an undeserved reputation, because realistically, who can begrudge people for doing what they love and making money from it? I mean, we're talking about that at the start of this. So if you're really good at discovering music and you want to share that on Instagram, and people go, shit, you're helping me find great music, and then suddenly someone wants to help support that work you're doing by giving you a brand deal, that's fine, right?
Right, that sounds so innocent.
If it's disclosed, and it is, if it's disclosed, if it's like I really love this music, but they're also paying me and I get to eat food this week because of it, that's fine, right? So so now we got that out of the way. But what I see happening to Instagram, well, firstly, I think Zuckerberg is winning. I think he's beating everybody and no one knows it. I think, he's the amount of money that they put into AI, the amount of money that they put into extended reality, the next internet, everyone kind of laughed at it. They spent whatever, they lost 21 billion in I've forgotten what their skunk works is called, but but when you actually see what they're doing now, it's going to be incredible. So Instagram may not exist in the form that it is today,
Yep.
but I think Meta will certainly be there with something.
I'm with you on that. Zuckerberg it's very hard to argue against the guy. I think it's easy to dislike him.
Yeah.
But when you see how he acts,
Yeah.
aside from like the investor side where you
Yeah,
think that he poured a bunch of money.
Maybe don't go into business with him. Maybe that's the one.
And whenever I hear something like Zuckerberg is winning, I recall visually this 4th of July video where he's like doing the foil surfing and he's like got the American flag.
Oh yeah. Yeah, now that for the greater part of my life, I didn't realize I was neurodiverse. I think that's one of the first things about neurodiversity is you just imagine everyone's exactly the same.
Yeah.
And he's so brilliant, like all of these incredible high achievers, like he's on a different level of the spectrum, which has him do things like that, or some of the kind of interesting, quirky things he does. And I'm in the middle on all of these builders. Like there's times where Elon Musk just drives me nuts, and there's times where I have to recognize that he's one of humanity's great builders. And it's the same with Mark Zuckerberg. He probably drives me nuts a little bit less. But yeah, what I'm seeing with extended reality and AI in particular, the fact that
How is this getting into the scene with the clients what do you do with these clients? Do you manage them? Do you help them? Do you provide a platform?
So we are definitely less than 6 months away from Meta releasing AI agents for creators. So these are agents that have been trained on that creator's natural language, i.e., my wife has 2,000 posts. She's got 30,000 followers. She's got 2,000 posts. Those posts show, a clear indication of her style, the way she talks, the way she replies to people.
That's such a great point. Yeah, all the nuances.
Yeah, exactly. And so we're less than 6 months away from Meta releasing these agents that will effectively turn creators into businesses. So I believe that we're heading towards this creator economy that's going to be really dynamic. Creators have such a great contact with their followers. They're constantly talking to them. They're constantly understanding, getting feedback. They're releasing, some of them are releasing 5-10 pieces of content a day. So they have a great understanding of how to connect with these folk. They're the perfect people to build and sell products in the new economy. And so Meta with this insight is going to help them turn into businesses by effectively offering them like a business suite via.
So what do you mean by a new economy?
Well, this is the creator economy takes the gig economy in a completely different, like it expands on it, right? So I was trying to explain this to a friend who's we're involved in education at the moment. I'm looking a lot at education. Like we're about to be subjected to like the biggest challenge in our lifetime, which is the re-education of 5 billion people plus. How do we take people from being accountants to a job that has a deeper future in a world where AI is just going to do all of that, right?
And it's going to be so much better.
Yeah. So yes, well, we'll get to that in a second too. But so where was I? I was going with re-education.
I mean,
the new economy. Me and my tangents. Right?
You gave me a huge number, like 5 billion. Like
Oh yeah. I mean, well,
It's like half of more than half, whatever, round numbers of every working person, every other job.
no, I 5 billion is almost every working person, right?
Yeah.
In fact, it must be, right? So if you're not retired and you're not like under 12,
Yep. Okay.
yeah, I can't imagine many jobs. And we talk about retraining. So if you're a landscape gardener, right, you're sitting in a pretty safe area because a lot of your work is in, your hands. But, sourcing customers, organizing those customers, designing the gardens, finding the plants, there's going to be still a whole bunch of stuff that you're going to need to retrain, because if you're not utilizing AI to do that, you are going to be beaten by someone else.
Any industry, pick something furthest away from what you know.
That's exactly right. And so my sense is when I say 5 billion people are going to need to retrain, some of them are going to need to really retrain. Like they need to go, what is the thing I love? And this is the incredible thing is each of us has a friend that's an accountant and maybe they love accounting. What do they love next? Because the two things are accounting won't be a job, and it's likely that thing you love next could be a job. So again, if it's, stamp collecting or whatever it is, you can start to build some kind of a job around that. In the new economy, again, it's going to be more about your passions and helping bring those passions to the world.
This is post AI, or is it post the current AI, or post like how fast are we accelerating?
Yeah, I mean it's how fast are we accelerating is a really big question. I don't know. For years I kind of sat there. I've been a fan of Ray Kurzweil for about as long as I can remember, and he's always talked about 2042 to 2045 for the singularity, but I'm pretty sure everyone's at like the next 5 years now.
So it's getting closer.
Yeah, so that's that accelerate. I know, listen, I just jumped to another massive topic. We're doing everything in like 30 minutes. No. We're going to go, we're talking about the new economy. And again, that's that. So one of the things, I'm often talking my friends off ledges about AI. Like they're like, oh my God, everyone's going to lose their job. They're the same people who've told me they hate their job for like the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Like they're only worried about losing their income, not their job, right? So that's the core component. Focus on what can make you money that you love doing that can coexist with AI. And I think that that'll probably end up being a passion of yours.
So I do have a question on my list here.
Oh, good. You've got questions? Because I've just been talking for 20 minutes.
It has to do with AI.
Yeah.
What do you, Brooke? What have you used AI for in your own life?
What have I used it for?
Yeah, and name. Feel free to name names.
What do I use AI? So I mean, every day I have a calendar appointment every day to challenge myself to use AI to do something I think it can't do. So
like a standing appointment, like.
Or like
personal challenge.
Yeah, personal challenge. So I'm trying to think of one that there are some great examples, but obviously I'll tell you what I hadn't used until it's more a case of what I hadn't used. I'd heard a lot about Gemini and I started using it yesterday. I'm really challenged by the interface is not ideal yet. I don't understand it just yet in terms of what they're trying to do. But I only spent, this is my yesterday's appointment challenge, I only spent half an hour trying to make Gemini do something and it couldn't do it. But so I tend to use it a lot. I probably overuse it. I will have like team members do work and then I'll go and redo it and using AI and send it to them. I'm that annoying person. Going, look, you could have just done that in 5 minutes. What are you doing?
So for you, it's fairly integrated into like some workflow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we have apps. I'm really proud that we're probably, I think, and certainly in New Zealand, maybe one of the first. I've got an app called Otterfish, and we integrated the OpenAI API into that really, really early on. And so outside of integrating it into applications we're building and stuff we're building, I'm using it in my everyday life. And at the moment, I can't say much beyond in terms of detail, but I'm consulting into about 5 or 6 major New Zealand organizations and brands about how they can integrate it in their lives. So in doing that, I'm often using it as well.
Yeah.
We've got a great, not far from here, less than a kilometer from here, we've got an NVIDIA H100. I don't know. Are you familiar with?
I'm very familiar with an NVIDIA H100.
Yeah.
I don't have one.
No. I think it's the only one in New Zealand, right?
Do you?
Yeah, I think it is.
I mean, that's a crazy stat.
Yeah, I believe, at least that's what I've heard.
Okay.
And I've got a really amazing, at Futureverse, they have an incredible team. You know, I think 9 PhDs there now. And we've got 2 at another project I'm working on. And our goal is to help New Zealand really, well, Futureverse is the world, but at the other project, our goal is to help New Zealand companies adopt or at least understand the adoption curve for AI that's required for them to stay relevant. Yeah.
I think that specific kind of training is very relevant and like almost urgent.
Yeah, it really is. And again, there will be, I think when someone used asymmetrical about a year and a half ago to describe a bunch of the relationships in this new world, that's exactly, I overuse it now because it really is. So the relationship between Instagram users and Instagram is asymmetrical, right? Everything is becoming more asymmetrical. And if you are in a battle with a competitor and they're using AI effectively and you're not, you just put a knife to a machine gun fight.
Yeah. I've been trying to encourage my students to try it out more and more. I feel like they're a little bit hesitant. There's like a bit of a murky gray area as to whether or not it's cheating or whether or not it's plagiarism, which there also is with the copyrights business that's happening, copyright lawsuits. But so like an example, a student sent me a message, said like, I'm trying to run this thing and it's not working. Do you got any tips? And I'm like, so I'm going to give it a day and then I'm going to, write back the AI answer and say like, hey, have you tried using this? Is the type of thing, if you run into a bug, that ChatGPT 4 is very, very good at.
Right. And that's encoding. It's really interesting because, so what's the goal of teaching these kids? The goal is to have them be valuable contributors, moving forward, to be able to bring ideas to life. I guess
you nailed it. This is the modern university, right? The goal is to send these people out and contribute back to society.
Yeah. And so I always wonder, like by the time they're out, so QA, which like is someone that's, I don't code, but that's built software, QA is a nightmare. The idea of kind of going through and checking all this code, and of course it's one of the biggest challenges in coding. The idea that we've gotten rid of, no one out there wants to be, if you do not want to be in QA, unless you've got some weird thing, you can still do it. But, that sense of code checking, I don't know why we'd want to send people out to do that job.
Yeah.
So it's great it's done.
Exactly. Right? Stamp it, put it away.
Yeah.
Our QA is over. Hopefully we don't lose the knowledge completely and then become reliant on.
Yeah, that's a much bigger debate, right? So in terms of, and I feel like I can't talk about it from a dev standpoint. I can talk about it, well, I can't even talk about it from a literary sense. But I think creative writing, as an example, won't die. I don't know how true this is, but I saw a creative writer say that creative writing, when GPT-4 came out, on a kind of a WeWork web service, Upwork or something, creative writing went from like $200 down to like $2.50 or something, right? Yeah. But now the top creative writers are now up to $600, right? So effectively, all it did was kind of eliminate shitty creative writing that everybody could do. And now, if you're really good, you're getting paid more.
That makes perfect sense. Same thing with shitty copywriters, right? That are probably were copying to begin with.
Yeah, that's right.
But they weren't as efficient at it.
Yeah, that's right. So with code, it's really interesting. I'm so excited about a world where idiots like me can bring to life ideas without the barriers of like, it's going to cost you $1 million and $100,000 a year to maintain. And so, because that's the barrier right now for building, a really solid app that could help humanity, right? So with your premise that the idea is for these students to bring ideas to life and, contribute, my sense is that there is more opportunity with AI than without.
Yeah, there's a lot more with AI. I just saw that Brian Armstrong at Coinbase sort of had a post about what they're using AI for, and he as an example, he said that their designers can integrate with Figma, which is a design tool, and mock up front end designs and do it in a fraction of the time of what it used to take. And that's also a fraction of the people and money that we're told, like, hey, can you turn this into a front end?
Yeah. And so when I talked a little bit about the death of Instagram, but the stat that Aaron McDonald, who I really, really admire, business partner at Non-Fungible Labs, and now he has Futureverse. So he's expecting there'll be 4 billion apps by, upwards of 4 billion apps by 2027. And that'll happen as humans, build their own sovereign apps. So like this is an app that is sovereign app and identity, but also the ability for, us to build apps that are, if you can build an app in an hour that is highly functional for a small community, it changes everything, right?
If I could get something to get my podcast guest parking, that would.
Yeah, that's right. My parking. If we could only build AUT, an app,
that's right,
that helps so that guests. Can I ask you how many guests own a printer?
I mean, if they do, it's at the office.
Yeah, I don't even know where I would get a printer from anymore.
And to be honest with you, I don't even want to bring that question up in advance because I don't want to deal with it.
I couldn't even think of where I'd get something printed.
Like I have to print something. I know, and we have recently subscribed to this like new, I call it fancy. It looks fine. It's a reservation system, right?
Oh yeah.
Big organization, and so like all of our bookings and everything, right?
This is for like you're talking about AUT here.
AUT, the whole unit.
Booking system, right?
Absolutely, this room has a booking system.
Why haven't they talked to the parking people?
Right. And you can use it to book parking, but the actual people that will ticket you, they need to see the piece of paper, and that's where it stops, right? It doesn't matter how intelligent everyone else is.
This is neither here nor there as a kind of a story, but. Intelligent transport systems I'm always interested in, and I went to the ITS summit like a few years ago, and the Melbourne Port was talking about how the whole of the Melbourne Port had just one guy that had to put a piece of paper, sign it, and put it on a spike, right? So every single thing, and so they digitized the port, and it's been a huge success until it got hacked, like last year, obviously, like end of last year, I think, like the whole port came to a close. And the little spike guy who's probably
Jerry is like,
he's
told
at home
you.
laughing.
Yeah,
it's probably the hacker, probably proving. Yeah.
So you mentioned Aaron and Futureverse. Can you go back? Can you give us a little primer on how Non-Fungible Labs started?
Yeah.
And then I want to ask you about the Fluff launch.
Yeah. So Aaron and I have known each other for years, well over a decade, and about 5 years ago, I was doing a little bit of work. He had someone pitch him a social media concept, and I looked at it. It was pretty average. And then he was like, well, why don't we just, buy your company? We are Tenzing. And instead we decided to do a share trade. We started working together and looking at the creator economy, because it's clear that it's going to be, to us, it's clear it's going to be a core part of the exponential age, this next age that we're in. And so he and I, we worked on a couple of things together. We launched Otterfish, which was software for the creator economy. And then in 2020, he called me and he said, you need to learn about NFTs. And it was clear the moment we started looking at these that they were going to be what we'd talked about for a long time, smart contracts.
He was already there. He was giving you the tap, like, hey.
I will say this, my sense is he had a sense of it. He has so much stuff going on. I got pretty deep, pretty fast into understanding some of it. And Tyler Shields, Tyler Ward, there's two Tylers. Tyler Ward, who was working with both of us at the time, had a really deep understanding of it. And so we then started some experimental stuff, and we launched the Unstoppable Art Machine, which was a really cool, I still stand by it. It's a really cool mechanism for effectively categorizing and urban art and helping the people creating urban art monetize what they're doing. So anyways, look into that. It's called
Yeah.
I think unstableartmachine.com. And then I'd brought on a guy called Alex Smalo, who's a really smart young guy who was returning home. His dad was sick and COVID, et cetera, et cetera. And so he came back and started working with us on the project. He brought in Jesse Metcalf, two very smart young guys who had already were interested in this area. And then Jesse created Fluff. Jesse is an artist who was studying a master's in AI and art in Berlin via correspondence. And in the middle of his off time at university, he built, what ended up becoming a $300 million plus company, those guys. So while I'd love to claim that I was like the genius behind it,
I mean, it sounds like you're giving out a lot of credit to others, and I'm sure they also deserve credit. But you were there.
I mean, as a link person, potentially that's my. After they launched it, the launch obviously went better than anyone could have imagined.
I just looked it up this morning, right,
Yeah.
to refresh my memory. So this is August 2021.
Yeah.
And it sold out in under 40 minutes.
Yeah.
According to a third-party source.
Yeah.
Right. And within hours, a peak sale was at like 75,000 US on the secondary market, and that was like 25 ETH at the time, which is how NFTs are priced, basically.
Yeah.
So like,
it was pretty crazy.
Blew up. What did you think?
Yeah, at the time, August 8th, it was by far the biggest launch in NFT history, launch day. Bigger than the day the Bored Ape launched or any of the previous launches. I, by the way, told these guys it was the worst business plan I'd ever seen when they presented it to me. Because they were like, yeah, and we'll make $4 million on the first day. And I was like, what? You guys are crazy. And obviously they outdid that by a long way. And and I think this is something that people need to understand. Aaron brilliantly came to me pretty early on when those guys got involved and said, we should give them, we at the time owned half the company each, pretty much. Aaron and I can't remember how it all worked out. We owned a chunk of the company each. We had some minor investors there. And then we were like, we need to give these two the majority of the company because they're really good. And so we signed it over to them. They drove it like they stole it, and they did an incredible job with it. And so that sense of understanding that, like, right, we have some insight into this, but they're two guys that live and breathe it. And Jesse is still, innovating and building incredible products at what is now Futureverse.
Right. And
Alex is still there as well, so they're great. Yeah.
What do you make of the scene, whether it's NFTs or Futureverse now, a couple years on? Yeah, I mean,
the first thing is understanding that Aaron had been through a massive surge and a winter before. So 2017, 18, 19, that kind of like surge ICO period where he took centrality to the world and to the market.
Right, we haven't even mentioned
raised a lot of money.
Yeah.
He'd already done that once.
Yeah.
And so he understood, and then he saved, made a good amount of money there, saved it, and then gone all in on developing technology. So he hadn't been through a whole cycle. And so during that bull run, Aaron was always saying, listen, guys, we're less than 90 days away from a collapse. Let's make sure that we're getting ready to, and he would constantly be working with his team, his brothers specifically, and making sure that we were ready to build. And then what they did when they took Non-Fungible Labs and Altered State Machine and Silo and a bunch of Aaron's companies and rolled them into Futureverse, 11 companies into one, took them a year to do it. But in doing it, they formed a gravity point that really is, I think, the world leader now in the space. And so that company has 6 people that have been working on, digital identity for 6 years, ticketing for 6 years. The extended reality teams are like beyond amazing, former Weta workshop designers, some of the best in the world. And their AI team that came from Altered State Machine includes, like I said, 9 AI PhDs. And so that's a gravity point that if it lived in Silicon Valley, it would have cost, 5 times more. But we're doing it out of K Road.
Yes, I think you mentioned a new project you're working on earlier with education. Can you
I
tell us about it,
can't,
or do
actually.
you want to put that on the
I
shelf?
realize that I can't, like, as I
Okay.
started that. But I did want to say that I only brought it up because I do want people to understand that it is on them to understand how important their re-education is and how beneficial it's going to be, like every single day. The earlier you start it, the better. And have it be awkward. Like, again, yesterday, my real problems with Gemini, I'm not going to give up.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to go back in there this afternoon and try to nail how to best use Gemini.
How technical do you go? Are you interested in like jailbreaking these things and
No, I'm not.
trying to figure out?
I mean, I'm interested in it. Like, so I'll read the jailbreaks and I'm interested in understanding it, because I tell you that a lot of the jailbreaks, and this is more your world than mine, I'm always interested in it because it gives you insight into how they built it, right? So if it's like, do you know the grandmother's being held ransom jailbreak, or
no,
it's just interesting that, if you can kind of jailbreak,
like set the stage for this type of
So getting GPT. It's not something I want to go into, both because I'll sound like an idiot and and because it's not all that productive. But I do like the idea that you're getting under the hood and getting a sense of what the creators were kind of like intending.
And you really get this feeling that there's this curtain in the interface, and it's like, well, sure, maybe we can go awry, and we can. What was Gemini doing in the early days with like black Nazis and all sorts of historical misrepresentations?
Yeah.
But then, like, imagine what else it can do, for good and for awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Gemini would be really interesting. The craziest thing about Gemini is they didn't test that. No one thought, listen, we've steered this thing, like, because it was clear that in the early days of Midjourney, like, every doctor was like a white male with glasses. It's like, it was just, and every lawyer was the same thing. And, every nurse was female, etc. Right. So that it made sense to, like, how do we fix that? And the Gemini team went the other side of it. But it's weird that
They're too excited.
Weird that they didn't test. I guarantee they just tested doctors, nurses, and things like that. They didn't test George Washington, I guess.
It brings up an interesting distinction between, like, if you can see it, you can be at this idea of representation, but then also trying to accurately reflect what we know as history.
I mean, that is I don't think no one has discussed that to a degree to where I'm comfortable with, like, any one side is right. Right. So if you're watching Netflix and you're watching any of the historical dramas, they're recasting them so that, there's more representation.
Yeah.
My question on that is how harmful it could be versus how beneficial it is, right? So it's a little bit of Mills. Is that right? Is Mills utilitarianism?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So my sense is that, in terms of the Netflix piece, you go, okay, well, it's cool. If the Queen of England is black, then my sense is that's kind of quirky and fun and cool.
Right,
But does it ignore the fact that clearly there were lessons to be learned from how unbelievably racist the public were in 18th century England, right? So I guess it's a sense of balancing those things up. And like I said, this is like an area where I haven't even got into understanding it, haven't heard anyone making a compelling argument either way.
Google didn't make any argument. They just said, oops, we've recalibrated our model.
Yeah.
And we're going to go back.
It's no harm, no foul. Listen, as someone who is, on the more privileged side as a person of color, I can tell you right now, the difference in the harm that came from having like 2 days of Black George Washington from like everything else that's happened is like, I feel like we need to harden up. I mean, it's unbelievable that sometimes that side of the aisle will talk about snowflakes. It's like, it feels like that's not actually the worst thing that happened.
And we're at one end of the spectrum. Like, in a sense, all of art is like this interpretive game that people are presenting as how they see it. And so, Netflix gets away with it, or Netflix is fine because it's for entertainment purposes, right? But for
In terms of historical,
in terms of how they cast their dramas,
yeah.
right? And they say like,
Sure.
based on history, right? They're not trying
Sure.
to claim.
No, that's right. That's right. I mean, but this is getting into a crazy part, but the interesting part about this again is the sense of, and it's probably, I would suggest it's in America, it's just it's a much harder topic.
Yeah.
Right? Race is a much harder topic. So, we can talk about the historical accuracy of Napoleon's height. Like, he was an average height person. He wasn't short, right? But that's not a problem when we're talking about that.
Average people everywhere are now
Portraying
offended.
people's heights accurately isn't a problem, is it?
Right.
It's not like we desperately need George Washington to be as tall as he was.
Right. And it's not a problem to cover an artist, cover a piece of music, right? And put your own interpretation on it. That's fine.
Yes, that's right.
And you said that it was,
Do not make a black mermaid, is what I'm saying. That's my point. Boy, we're in some lightning topics here, buddy.
Speaking of lightning, let's do some rapid fire.
Oh, okay. See how that meshes with.
So I have some on my list here. Let's start with some weird stuff coming out of Asia, or perhaps it's already been there in terms of the way that they're marketing and doing their online shopping and commerce.
No, I don't think it's weird. I just think that.
So I've seen some of these videos and I'm like, what is this? Is this for real?
Oh yeah, and you're talking about the 3-second lady. If you guys Google 3-second sales lady,
I'm talking about her.
Yeah, so it's incredible. I think it's quirky.
Yeah.
And my sense is, and I haven't bought from her obviously, but my guess is that there must be like she holds it up for it's less than 3 seconds, by the way. She's misleading people. It's like
right,
for a second.
Performance, yeah.
Off, right? It's performance. But surely there must be some other place where they can see the stuff they're buying. And someone told me she sold like $14 million on Singles Day. So okay, if we're going to if we're going to think about the revolution in selling, which takes us right back to what I was talking about before, in terms of, buying an item is about seeing the item, or like being aware of it, being able to decipher where it sits in terms of competitors, like going through that choosing process is the funnel, right? Trusting that it's a good product, and then trusting that you're getting a good deal, and then purchasing it, right? And the truth is that all of those things happen better if it's a person that you know well versus like a sales assistant in the store, right? Or a nameless, faceless website. And so social selling is infinitely better than just a nameless, faceless website where you don't trust anything, or a store where you don't trust the brand that's trying to sell to you, right? If a brand tells you that this is the very, this mug is the best mug and it's dishwasher safe and it will last for 5 years, or and it whatever it is, the mug. That's one thing if a brand tells you that. But if a creator that's been using the mug for 6 months goes, it's my favorite mug, it's dishwasher safe, it keeps my coffee hot, all the things that a mug could be, right? Then there's someone you trust. You've seen them endorse things in the past. You know that their brand would be torn apart if they endorse shitty stuff, because of course, social commerce is a two-way street. You can just comment straight underneath. You sold me that shitty mug 3 weeks ago.
Yeah, right.
Who's to say this vacuum cleaner's good? So that's, in that sense, I think social commerce is closer to what my economics teacher talked to me about when I was in sixth form, which is, a perfect economy. That sense of like everybody being involved in the economy. Sorry, that was this was not rapid fire, was it? Social commerce is good. China, Southeast Asia, what they're doing there is great.
Look out for it.
Yeah. Well, again, the problem is payments. If Zuckerberg had bought PayPal 10 years ago, this would be a very different conversation, but he didn't.
Is Ready Player One, other than an entertaining tale, are we going to see some of this? Is that
you're aware of
direction?
The partnership?
I'm aware of the partnership.
Yeah, so smarter people than me at Futureverse would be able to answer that. Aaron McDonald specifically will tell you that. So at Futureverse, we partnered with the Ready Player One franchise, and it's our job to help them bring the Oasis to life. at Futureverse. So we've got a lot of smart people who are looking at that. And the core component, the thing that I'm, again, impressed by is it's not about the flashy visual stuff yet. Everything that they're doing at Futureverse, or a lot of what they're doing at Futureverse, is about the fundamental rails, the interoperability, payment systems, just everything that would allow you to take your assets from one environment into another environment as painlessly and as smooth as possible.
Have you used the Apple Vision Pro or
I haven't.
similar?
It's at the office. There's one at the office.
Okay.
So I've got to go and check it out.
Okay. All right.
I want to watch Shogun. I'm stealing this from Jesse Metcalf. He mentioned this the other night. Have you watched Shogun?
No.
Yet? It's so good.
Okay.
I want to be like surrounded
Like
by
right there with it. Yeah.
So good. Yeah.
We did touch on this a little bit earlier in one of our chats. Where do you reckon we are in the universe with aliens? Are we alone?
My end, now that we're at this stage, I wonder how interesting space is. So like when we look at, like, people have been so fascinated by space, with space travel. I just wonder, once a society becomes as tech, that this is one of my Fermi answers, right? So you're familiar with the Fermi paradox?
No. Oh, Fermi. Yes. Yeah.
So did I mispronounce his name?
No, I thought you said Fermi. One of my Fermi paradoxes.
So one of my answers is it's just not interesting enough, and it's so resource hungry. Like the difference between, traveling to an interesting planet and creating a world is, the resource required in 5 years' time is going to be here and here, right? And so I don't know. I mean, I believe we're going to create an alien life form in the next 5 years. I think that our unbelievable fervor and hunger to be not alone is going to be satisfied, and then who knows what happens then.
It almost seems like a bit of a contrast, like you mentioned about space exploration, looking out compared to looking in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and so, we talk about the sense of like how absolutely gung-ho Elon is to colonize Mars. It's like, we've got a great planet. It's really hard to do that. I just don't, again, so it's that resource that's required to do that. And it's kind of like, why? Why do we need to travel 4 million light years to see if there's life like us when there is abundant life here?
There is heaps to do at home.
And then we can also imagine amazing worlds and do incredible things. So
the Bitcoin halving is coming up in a couple days' time.
Sure.
Have people been asking about this? Have you been?
I've got a couple of friends that are massive Bitcoin maxis.
Yeah.
And so I just hear about it a lot.
Yeah.
I checked it this morning. So I do not own a lot of Bitcoin. So I mentioned I'm kind of like, I've been on ETH for a very long time. And nowadays, most of what I've invested in is actually the fundamental technology, the companies that are bringing this out. It's interesting that it's coming, it's like coinciding with like what people are calling the start of World War III. It's probably not. But yeah, it's really interesting because it's obviously dampened a lot of the heat, right?
And I think we've seen over this past weekend, right? Yeah. In terms of price action, a lot of money coming out. But then again, there's going to be a lot more money coming in later.
Yeah. And I think, and again, this is way outside of my area of expertise, but if you want retail people in, they're going to react the way that retail people react. That's the nature of things. Like Iran sends missiles and it's a bad thing. And I know that, Bitcoin, a lot of Bitcoin maxis want it to be like gold, but at the moment there's still gold. So people are still using gold.
Yeah.
Like gold.
And in a real apocalypse across many nations, your Bitcoin is not going to be any good to anyone anyways. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto?
Hal Finney, right, is probably your best bet. I don't know. You better, again, people that are better at answering this than me. I think it's Hal Finney and a collection of people.
Okay. Do you think a group of people could do something like this?
Oh, well, I think we know that there were a couple of people that were So I think the best understanding is that it was more than one person. I love that it's not like, I'm sad that Hal's dead, but I love the fact that no one hopefully will ever know.
Yeah, the story is beautiful as is.
Yeah, it's incredible. So it's amazing. A growing number of idiots think that means that it's CIA, but it's not.
They always will, though.
Yeah.
All right, Brooke, thank you very much for coming
Wow.
down today.
I mean, I haven't even had a coffee today, so I have no idea why I've been so jumping around.
That's all right.
Place, but yeah.
You bring a good energy. You're very easy to talk to. I wouldn't believe that you're 51.
I know. Look at the bit grey wizard beard.
I didn't ask you about golden. Do you want to tell us what golden is?
Listen, this is the most important thing. These. So you can see in New Zealand when our flip-flops would break, we would put a bread tag over there, and when this thing would pull through, and that would stop it from pulling through. So Jordan Watson, How to Dad, and I have created one with the bread tag already in. It's thicker and stronger.
Yep.
And these are now coming up on 2 years old, and I wear them most weeks, a couple of times a week, and look at them go.
I mean, that's a good condition for a 2-year-old.
That's great.
I like that it looks like a bread tab on the bottom.
That's strong. It's strong.
It's
available
not just
at here'sgolden.com. Boom. That's the ad.
All right.
Done my job. I high five at the end of the podcast.
Thanks for joining us, folks. Look out for the next episode of the Blockchain New Zealand podcast, probably in the same spot you found this one. Cheers.